Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another ISEAS Yusof Institute webinar. My name is Dr Norshahril Saat, a Senior Fellow and Coordinator of the Regional Social and Cultural Studies Program at the Institute. I'm the moderator for this morning's webinar. This webinar is jointly organized by the Indonesian Studies Program at the Institute and the International Islamic University of Indonesia, UIII. Ladies and gentlemen, pick any book on Islam in Indonesia and one organization will feature: the Nahdlatul Ulama, or NU in short. Formed in 1926, it remains the most prominent Islamic organization. Since its founding, NU has evolved and undergone a significant transformation. It began as a social and religious organization representing the traditionalist brand of Islam. It survived the Dutch colonial rule and the Japanese occupation and was part of the independence struggle. It then became a political party. In 1984, it returned to its original mission when it adopted the Khitah 1926. NU chairs and leaders have played a significant role in Indonesia's religious and political sphere. One notable NU chairman, Abdurrahman Wahid, or Gus Dur, was Indonesia's fourth president. Prominent NU members have also taken up cabinet posts, appointed advisors to the Presidential Council, and elected to key leadership positions in provinces. The current Vice President, Ma'ruf Amin, is also a notable NU Kiai. Moreover, NU leaders were appointed as chairman of the Ulama Council of Indonesia, MUI, university rectors, and function as public intellectuals. Recently, NU elected a new chairman. We are very honored to have you with us this morning, Bapak Kiai Haji Yahya Cholil Staquf, the new chairman of Nahdlatul Ulama. Congratulations, Pak Yahya, on your election.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yahya is no stranger to the Indonesian public scene. He was a Presidential Advisory Council member, the One Team Press, under the first Jokowi Dodo government. Bapak's election as chairman is significant. NU will be celebrating its centenary in 4 years, and Bapak's vision and plans will set the direction for Indonesia's largest Islamic organization. We are pleased to be joined by Bapak this morning to hear about NU's plans going forward. Indonesia was once known as a smiling face of Islam, but currently issues on radicalism, terrorism, exclusivism, and discrimination towards minorities targeting liberal Islam, Shias, and Ahmadis seem to gain much attention. What is the future of Islam Nusantara? We hope Bapak can shed some light on these issues. Gus Yahya will speak for about 20 minutes, and this will be followed by presentations by two discussants. I'm very pleased to also welcome Dr. Azhar Ibrahim from Singapore. He is currently a lecturer at the Department of Malay Studies, National University of Singapore. He has published and lectured extensively on the sociology of religion and literature and compared Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. He has also written widely on Malay-Indonesia intellectual development. Welcome, Dr. Azhar.
Thank you.
The second discussant is also no stranger to ISEAS Yusof Institute, Dr. Philips Vermonte, who is currently the Dean of Faculty of Social Science at UIII. Dr. Philips was formerly the Executive Director of CSIS and has researched widely on politics in Indonesia. Welcome, Dr. Philips Vermonte. So each discussant will speak for 10 minutes each. These presentations will be followed by a questions and answers session. So the audience may write your questions in the Q&A function. Feel free to do so as the speakers are presenting. Please identify yourself and state your affiliation. If you have any feedback on technical issues, please indicate them via the chat function, and our ISEAS technical team will address them as soon as possible. A gentle reminder that Chatham House rules applies to this webinar. So without further ado, it is my pleasure now to invite Bapak Kiai Haji Yahya Cholil Staquf to present his keynote address. The screen is yours, Bapak Kiai.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, syukurlah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, Sayyidina Maulana Muhammad ibn Abdullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi mawala. Thank you, Dr. Norshahril. Good morning, everybody. Dr. Azhar, Dr. Philip, Dr. and distinguished participants of the discussion. It's been at least the last 10 years that we and the leadership of Nahdlatul Ulama are trying to bring about the issues of civilization in our organizational dynamics. We, in 2015, in our National Congress, we put as the theme of the National Congress, the Muktamar, a statement about Islam Nusantara and world civilization. We are doing it because we believe that it was exactly the vision of the founding fathers of Nahdlatul Ulama when they established this organization. Nahdlatul Ulama was founded in 1926 right after the collapse of the Ottoman Turks. The Ottoman Turks had been functioning as the political backbone of the civilizational construct of Muslim world in that time, functioning for like 700 years, continuing the empires before it. And when it collapsed, talking about the Ottoman Turk Empire, collapsed in after the World War I, and disbanded officially in 1924. Muslim world lost the dominant political construct of its civilization, and it's very, very fundamental problem, because the civilizational construct has been working effectively for Muslim worlds since the beginning or the birth of Islam. And the establishment of this construct had been so deeply embedded within the belief system of Islam, including in the various various models of religious practices, and also the views on Islamic laws and so forth, and even in the mentality of Muslims. Now, when Muslim world lost this civilizational construct, then it was a great shock that everybody in Muslim worlds then was challenged to find a replacement for this lost construct. So we believe that the founding fathers of Nahdlatul Ulama, which were the prominent ulamas of Indonesia at the time, were thinking about this fundamental problem of losing civilizational construct, but finding a new one, of course, is not certainly is not an easy task. Now, after almost 100 years of Nahdlatul Ulama existence, we believe that it is a time for us, for Nahdlatul Ulama, and we want to also call for the rest of the Muslim world to join us in this way of thinking. It is time for us to make a choice and take position. Before World War I, the world was a jungle of competing identities. And it was precisely the escalating conflict of identities that dragged the world into the great and vicious war with great human tragedy as a result. And of conflict was not finished with that World War I. It continues even more viciously until the World War II, with even greater human tragedy as the result. And it was the severe tragedy experienced by the humanity that then after World War II, the international community came into consensus because of a broad-based aspiration for a new, more reliable order, international order, to guarantee global stability and security. Then the international community came into consensus about a new order, started with the United Nations Charter in June 1945, followed by the establishment of the UN organization in October that year. And then also one very fundamental element was the resolution, the UN resolution on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. The relative global security and stability that we've been enjoying up to this time actually is the result of this international consensus happened back then, since 1945. But this so-called New World Order is still not perfect yet, still very weak and vulnerable to subversion, very vulnerable to subversion. Yeah. And there are still many failures of the system in this international order. So now, the way I see it, and this is also what Nahdlatul Ulama is seeing, that the whole global community is facing a very fundamental choice. Do we want to continue working on this new international order that emerged after World War II, or do we think that this order is simply cannot work, and then we want something else? We know that many in Muslim world are thinking about finding a way to regain the glory that the Muslim world had before, whether under the Ottoman Empire or the older empires before. That's why we have nowadays various Islamic movements calling for universal caliphate. What we are seeing as the movement of radical Islam actually is the manifestation of this aspiration. An aspiration, you see, a desperation about the so-called new order and the dream to regain the glory of the past. So this is the choices that we are facing, and we need to make decision and take position in this. Now the ulama has actually made decision and take position in this. Nahdlatul Ulama, since the beginning when it was established, is seeking for an alternative of the previous order, including the alternative to the previous civilizational construct that Muslim world had before, namely the Ottoman Turks. So that's why Nahdlatul Ulama supported the struggle for Indonesia's independence, and also supported the foundational ideas of Indonesia, which are in alignment with the ideas of a new order. You see, this new international order that emerged after World War II actually has several fundamental and I would say revolutionary ideas in it. The first is about humanism. There was no universal human rights before the emergence of this new world order. Not in the Muslim world and not in the West. In the West, you still have discriminations based on race and even gender. And Indonesia, with its independence and the promulgation of Indonesia's constitution, was among the first aspirants of this value of universal human rights, since it is stated in the preamble of the Constitution that independence is the right of every nation, and therefore colonialism or oppression in the world must be erased, because it is not in alignment with the values of humanity and justice. So, and then in 1955, I believe, it was the Indonesian first general election that was becoming the first election in the world really practicing the principle of universal vote rights, where race, ethnicity, gender, religion really all have the same rights of vote in the election. And Nahdlatul Ulama has been in support for all of these fundamental ideas since the beginning. And now we come to a clearer idea about what is the problem and what matters for our future. So Nahdlatul Ulama then make a decisive choice to continue to struggle in perfecting this new world order. The international order emerged after the World War II, and not and refused to go back to the old order before the World War I. Now, and as the consequence of this choice, then Nahdlatul Ulama is prepared to recontextualize the Islamic teachings, the elements, various elements in the Islamic teachings which are potentially problematic if we want to perfect this new international order, because many elements in the Islamic teachings are still in the are still in alignment with the construct of the old order. For example, some capital penalties like the death penalty for the apostates is something that is related to the old construct of Islamic belief system in match with the old construct of Islamic civilization before the World War I. So we chose, Nahdlatul Ulama already chose not to go back there and find a way for a new construct of civilization. That's why in 2019, we, in our National Conference of Ulama in West Java, we issued a kind of a new fatwa stating that the category of non-Muslim or infidel or kafir is no longer relevant in the context of modern nation state. Because in modern nation state, everybody is equal before the law. And that is the fundamental value. So, and then we keep thinking about what should be done in order to recontextualize the Islamic teaching toward the harmonious and just international order and sustainable peace. So in this struggle then, we need to have a strong standpoint. That's why we also are talking about self-reliance in our last National Congress or Muktamar. What we mean by self-reliance is not just in the sense of economy. As a matter of fact, the economic context of this idea, of the idea of self-reliance, actually is just a secondary thing for us. The most important meaning of self-reliance here is in the sense of theological standpoint. In every Muslim society, there is a structure of religious authority. In the past, under universal caliphate, that was the ultimate aspiration of Muslims. The religious authority is in the hands of the caliph, of the imam, which is supposed to be the universal leader of Muslim world. But we need to be aware that in various different areas inhabited by Muslims, every Muslim community actually has been growing its own model of culture and civilizational mentality that then also reflected in the religious views of the people, including in Indonesia. That is why in Indonesia, since the medieval era, actually, the Muslim society in Indonesia has been having its own model of, let's say, civilization and culture. So if we want to contribute more in the global struggle for the new and better civilization, then we need to make our own standpoint in this, and not just following what people or Muslims or religious Islamic religious authority from other part of Muslim world to drag us into the direction that the other want. That means we need to stand for Indonesia's own religious authority, structure of religious authority. In Nahdlatul Ulama, it is clear that we have our own effective structure of religious authority. So we need to stand for it, and then based on that position, we articulate our ideas and aspirations for this new civilizational construct for Muslim world, which we believe would also be a global universal construct for everybody. And this is important, especially because we are seeing reality that various Muslim societies in other areas are failing to deal with this fundamental problem. So this is our idea about the self-reliance, which especially means self-reliance in conducting our religious life. Now, of course, we also need self-reliance in the sense of economy. This is something more practical, but I would say not easier also. We need the self-reliance in the sense of economy because we want to develop a sufficiently strong movement which we wish to produce impact in not just Indonesia's domestic environment, but also in the global arenas. So this agenda to develop self-reliance in the sense of economy will be one of the primary agenda in this in my term of leadership. And at the same time, we want to create a more dynamic movement among our with our ulamas in thinking and producing ideas related to the new, related to the aspiration for a new international order, an order that should be truly just and harmonious, founded upon respect for the equal rights and dignity of every human being. So that's, I hope, will sufficient to start our discussion. Again, thank you for this opportunity. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Bapak Kiai Yahya Cholil Staquf, for the very insightful keynote. I think you have raised very important points pertaining to the history of Nahdlatul Ulama, the evolution of Nahdlatul Ulama, and the thinking behind Nahdlatul Ulama's ideas, humanism, civilization, Islam. I'm sure these will definitely be raised in the questions and answers, and will be the context for us to have more discussion later in today's session. Without further ado, in the interest of time as well, may I now invite our first discussant, Dr. Azhar Ibrahim, to say a few words in response to your talk. Dr. Azhar, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Norshahril. Yeah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, foremost to Kiai Haji, yeah, Yahya Cholil Staquf, yeah, Professor Phillips Vermonte, yeah, and participants of this forum. Yeah, along the line of what, if I may say, yeah, Gus Yahya, yeah, because I'm, I grew up watching Indonesian media, and they call you Kiai Gus Yahya. So I have talked to my friends Gus Yahya. Yeah, maaf ya Pak if I use the word Gus Yahya.
So, yeah, I'm more familiar with that too.
Thank you, Pak. Yeah. So when Gus Yahya mentioned about NU's endeavor, yeah, for this global reconstruction, yeah, I have in mind too that this NU stands for Nahdlatul Ulama, nurturing universalism, yeah, for peace in common humanity. Yeah, I'm not an expert in NU per se, but I'm an avid reader of the religious and intellectual trends in Indonesia. Yeah, so allow me to just very briefly go through this presentation. Yeah, next. Yeah. We know that NU was established long before the birth of Indonesian nation, 1926, yeah, historically, and who has played tremendous role in Indonesian nation building, without any doubt for that, and who represent the voice of moderation, which is vital in this era of radicalism and extremism. Interestingly, if you look around, the progressive voices in Indonesia comes from within the fraternity NU. Of course, there are also friends from Muhammadiyah too, which are part of these progressive voices. Although in the past, when I was undergraduate, we always being told that NU is the conservative strand, right? I think scholarship have not updated. Yeah, I think it's important that ISEAS, yeah, and many universities come forward, and I think need to change that kind of paradigm. Yeah, next. Yeah, so if you look at the kind of NUs in this mapping, yeah, what is actually special about NU is about its moderation. It has strong link with the community. It has a nurturing intellectual tradition, i.e. the Pondok Pesantren is one of these strengths, yeah, and of course fostering cosmopolitan outlook, albeit the santri, yeah, in the past had a strong agrarian background. Of course, we know today many santri are of urban background, yeah. Next. And because of this, yeah, there are realization amongst NU leadership that there is actually a serious, yeah, that they need to battle, yeah. And NU, for example, in the words of Syed Akil Siraj, yeah, the chairman of PBNU before that Gus Yahya succeed, yeah, NU always hold firmly on the moderate model of religiosity, which is based on tolerant, righteous path and balance, right? Unfortunately, at the dawn of Reformasi, some section of the Muslim community projected the different outlook. We know about this, right? About confused santris, about this, you know, Muslim groups demanding, and so on and so forth. Instant Islamic organization promoted a certain idea of jihad. Islam is then given an aggressive face. This is where NU came forward and trying to correct this many misperception, right? A big giant had been silent for long, right? And I think in the past recent leadership we can see NU coming back, you know, so you don't kind of like, you know, disturb the sleeping giant, yeah. So next, if I may say, next. So this is where NU's role here. It's not just about yeah, firming up its organization in the archipelago, but nurturing universalism. In fact, thanks to many of my my readings on Indonesia, yeah, on Indonesian Islam written by NU scholars, yeah, or scholars associated with NU, I begin also to understand the kind of universal message that Islam brought about. Yeah. All right. This is also at the same time a potential area that remains less explored. Yeah. Very much uttered in the Indonesian scene, but we rarely outside Indonesia heard about NU's endeavor. Next. Yeah. So the universal brotherhood and solidarity, which means to bring universal vision of common humanity of peace, inclusivity, plurality, and NU has all what it takes to deliver it. Yeah. Big resources, I would say. It has that political will, a religious will, if I may say too. Yeah. And the kind of respect, and because he has been quite some time in the region, yeah, a brand name in the region that is very much respected. Yeah, and we know today also there is a tendency for internalization of NU. Yeah, of course, you know, this assignment to establish NU centers around major part of the world, but at the same time, yeah, this idea of pushing towards a message of university solidarity and unity is not just simply about internalization of NU. It's more than that. Yeah, but this need, of course, the best ulama leadership, scholar activists, cadres and santris to take the lead. And of course, NU is no short of this. Next. Yeah. And if I may play around with the word, yeah, NU also would mean Nusantara universalism. This is what Islam Nusantara is all about too, right? Or NU can also be the Nahdlatul Ulama, captain or nation of the people. But of course, there's not only one captain, there are many captains. I remember Gus Dur says this, yeah, that at times, you know, there could be a possibility that we project alternative. But the other time, there's another keyword in Gus Dur's intellectual corpus is actually complementarity, to complement the existing model or existing institution. Next. So the strength of NU, yeah, is within is the affirmation of that solidarity and unity, and we know that this is always uttered by the religious leadership, right? It is in terms of religious spirit, national spirit, pluralistic spirit, and humanistic. But I like most when Gus Dur simplified it into three, right? Religious solidarity, yeah, Ukhuwah Islamiyah, national solidarity, Ukhuwah Wataniyah, universal human solidarity, Ukhuwah Bashariyah, right? I think I've never come across when I was undergraduate this notion. Yeah. So when I read this, wow, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That part what we call the universal message of Islam. Next. So NU cosmopolitanism. This is another dimension where Gus Dur mentioned about pribumisasi at the same time where he was dealing with the kind of internal reform needs to be made. But on the other hand, he also promoted this kind of cosmopolitanism. What is this all about? yeah, that we see the experience of the past and the embracement of global community. This is actually no stranger to the historical experience of NU. And interestingly more, that with the fraternity of NU, there were many religious, intellectual gems and resources that NU can provide. Yeah, I mean, side by side with other big ormas, yeah, big organization like Muhammadiyah. Yeah, it has strong grassroots network and series of educational academic institutions. I mentioned just now, Pondok Pesantren is one of its vital, what they call it, dynamics. Yeah, contribution to nation building as follows: interpreter and defense of the Torah, which provides solid intellectual rootedness and cultural ballast. 2, a moral voice of the nation in times of crisis. We always see that, yeah, whenever there is a kind of violence, animosity, you know, and who stand up and say that that is not correct, and that is a very powerful voice, yeah, for the Indonesian nation, including for the world, yeah? And affirmation of tradition as dynamic force and cause without succumbing to traditionalism and totalitarian system, and prevent serious delusion. You know, if you are any student of modernization, you know, the important role of tradition here, yeah, is very much to be recognized, because without core tradition in any process of modernization or globalization, that they could lead to many great dislocation. Yeah, so importance of tradition, which is NU as the custodian here. Next. But then there are challenges ahead. Being the voice of reform, NU needs to be more proactive in the public sphere, right? Of late, we have been seeing that, yeah? But when I was an undergraduate, yeah, that was in the 90s and early 2000, I don't see much that, right? In times where puritanical, exclusive, and extremist circles are making much inroad into Muslim society, the usual NU's modus operandi may not work any longer. Yeah, I'm not here to give advice to Gus Yahya. Yeah, Gus, minta maaf. Yeah, it's not about this. Yeah, I'm as an observer, I've noticed this. Yeah, that there's need to make active presence in the cyber and digital world to counter the widespread of certain fundamentalist affiliation, which they have do very well in the cyber world. Right, our young ones are reading them than reading friends from NU. They need to be active in the discursive terrains, including publication. We know that there are many campuses affiliated to NU, but unfortunately too, it is normally written in Bahasa Indonesia or yeah, but not in the world languages. This is where we need to translate works of NU circles to world languages, yeah, including, if I may say, to the Malay Bahasa Melayu version, because I think the Malaysians, Bruneians, and Singaporean counterparts needs to read in the Bahasa Melayu version, yeah, because although it's the same kind of language, but totally different semantics at times. Yeah, the need to enhance learning of the intelligence here, the enhanced learning of intelligence, which could be the transmitter and disseminator of ideas. Yeah, I think this has been done very well by the Indonesian government. The need to maintain the traditional center of NU learning amidst this euphoria and of celebrity and affluent participation, feel good pengajian. Right? This I remember a lecture given by Gus Baha, yeah. He says that, you know, anyway, you know, there is a need to come back to the, not just the kitab, come back to the kitab, but come back to the less celebrity-like kind of pengajian, right? Because these are the one that would be a great sources for the study of the Turaf. Turaf means the classical corpus. Next, yeah. And of course, in forging universalism and justice, and who cannot do it alone, it needs to collaborate with other religious congregation. Yeah, that's what I think Gus Yahya in his experience, yeah, moving around the world, yeah, name it, yeah, all the major cities of the world, yeah, Gus Yahya, like Gus Dur too, yeah, have been going around to promote this, yeah, ensuring the call that the Rahmatan Alamin or Islam Nusantara cannot be just rhetorical, to avoid any form of intellectual and cultural involution. Therefore, greater space needs to be accorded to critical spaces, especially the voice from the young. Yeah? And the sway of populism, fanning ethno-religious cut, where decisive stand needs to be made. Yeah, because I think my reading, and who has been tolerating too long. Yeah, for those who have traditional affinity with NU but are pursuing a hardline stance. yeah, with certain political interest to gain, right? So it's like a big brother, listening to all these squabble, all these young boys squabble, the big brother keep quiet, yeah. But I think at times the big brother needs to say something. Hello, that's not right, yeah. Please, yeah, be disciplined, yeah. So the political path and the enticement of practical politics is a distraction, and I think the Muktamar, yeah, mentioned about practical politics is no longer the path to be taken. I think this is, in my reading, is a good way to move. Yeah, consistent and persistent in its inclusive approach in putting more women in the leadership role. Yeah, I think we know about the prominence and the role of women can take role in any kind of transformation. NU as a global player, here we see that NU as the largest Muslim organization in the world can play this role. We know very well that Soka Gakkai and few others, right? Yeah, Gus Dur himself have dialogue with Ikeda, yeah, on this matter. Yeah, taking the lead in the global dialogue, which just now Gus Yahya mentioned. Next, yeah, I need to go very fast. But is global ethics enough? Yeah, I think Gus Dur have written, tremendous good essays on this. Yeah, that any kind of while we recognize global ethics is good, yeah, and global governance is needed, it can only be meaningful if it is based on sovereignty of law and justice in international relations. This is what just now I think Gus has alluded to. Peace cannot be maintained if these two dimensions are neglected, and these ideals cannot simply be left by one group to usher its own idealism. It must be a dialogue. Yeah, it's not just one superpower so-called taking the lead with the global venture. Yeah? A concrete and conscious efforts needs to be worked out at the global level, pursuing dialogue, solidarity, and cooperation. Who's to say peace without justice is an illusion. Okay? Next. So to be international should not be confused with the current global seeking of ranking and standardizing. Yeah, which is part of the mantra of neoliberal scheme of things. To be international, to be global, is to assume global vision and responsibility as torchbearer of upholding those universal message. Yeah. Next. So to conclude, yeah, NU as a platform for maturing universalism must have the ability to speak not simply of justice of recognition, which is actually about issues of identity, not also about justice of distribution, about social justice, yeah, about economic rights and so on, but also justice of representation, yeah, which now includes, yeah, minorities, yeah, women, and so on and so forth, right? To use Nancy's phrases parlance, yeah, that world peace and stability cannot be simply by forging tolerance and embracing diversity, but a conscious call and work towards that solidarity and the conscious will to end and mitigate human suffering due to economic inequalities, injustices, and denial of basic human rights. Right? So this is not just like feel good that we want to embrace the world order, but if we have not addressed the economic social realities. And I think to sum up, the potential and resources of NU is great because it has that political consciousness without being politicized, number one. Two, it has great social awareness without simply being ideational, but it affirms praxis. I think in many of the speeches of Gus Yahya, he alluded to this. Three, cultural affiliated without succumbing to ethnic and religious sectarianism. And four, intellectually broad without being stuck to or imitating academism. Right? I think this is sometimes organizational. Lastly, on Mandiri, this is where Gus Dur asks question. Yeah, and I think this is what I think Gus Yahya and friends and who also been asking this question. Yeah, when we say about importance of religion in the life of the nation, right? We cannot afford this question, and this is a very important question. And I think it should be also be addressed not by just NU, by other groups who are interested to bring about reconstruction. It says this. He says this. Can it be transformed into institutional framework that takes forward the acceptance into a more positive task of developing the rich pluralistic religious conscience of Indonesian society to respond to the need for socio-economic change and the concomitant problems of modernization? Or has it fulfilled its lifespan and outlived its purpose, and it must now be removed from the scene to liberate the religious life from rigid institutional constraints? There's always this dilemma. Which part of it you want to retain, which part of it you need to rethink again, right? I think on that note, yeah, And all throughout, ladies and gentlemen, my last point here, that NU in delivering its strategies, if we can do a checklist. Yeah, we know, and our reading, we can see what that NU can offer and what NU had delivered. In the sense of its vision and commitment of thought leadership, I would say yes. Very clearly, in the past 2 decades, there is a strong movement towards that kind of thought leadership. 2, educative and discursive approach in both in forms and substance, it is still moving in that direction, right? 3, communication and dissemination within outreach projection. I think this is actually the lowest. Yeah, if I was to give the lowest point, this is the lowest point, because this is has great potential but has not been done. But cultural circle operate organically from local public via empowerment. This is tremendous. This I've seen in Indonesian campus. You know, those group belonging to NU fraternities have done it very well. And lastly, international partnership and collaboration. And I think in the leadership of Gus Yahya, this is moving forward. Yeah, simply put, Indonesia and NU has that promising deliverance. Yeah, not just for the Indonesian nation, but also for all of us. On that note, thank you. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Azhar Ibrahim, for that very useful comments in relation to Gus Yahya's talk. Without further ado, may I now invite Dr. Vermonte to provide his response. The screen is yours, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Norshahril Saat. First of all, I'd like to thank ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute for inviting me and to share some response on the Gus Yahya, if I may, speech earlier. And then also I would like to now have a chance to personally congratulate Gus Yahya for his election as the chairman of PBNU. Congratulations, Gus Yahya. Now, I will be very brief, given the 10 minutes time allotted to me. I will have some response to the speech made earlier by Gus Yahya, at least 5 points, about 5 points, Dr. Norshahril. Number one, I think we all agree about the importance of NU for Indonesia. And then especially because of the history that Gus Yahya reflected in his speech, that is, NU was founded before Indonesia exists. And I think we need to highlight this, because the consequence of this is that NU is a self-help, a self-organized mechanism for the Indonesian society even before Indonesia exists. And that, as we know, as a student of political studies, this form a very strong root for social capital actually in Indonesia. And that since then on, NU and also I think Muhammadiyah both have played this role as a very strong civil society with a strong foundation and a strong vision about being an entity independent of the state, and instead they are contributing to the state. And that, I think, affect the way Indonesian politics operate, especially in the context of Indonesia being the largest Muslim democracy right now. If we compare, broadly between Indonesia, how Indonesian Islam is distinguished from the Middle East, probably we would find out that I think one of the key reasons is that, we have this kind of a strong civil society foundation in the Muslim majority country, something that is probably missing from the Middle East. That's, I think, first reflection. And I think we should thank Gus Yahya for reminding us about the history of Nahdlatul Ulama that was founded before Indonesia exists. And secondly, because of that history, Nahdlatul Ulama has always been the beacon of Indonesian sense of nationalism. That is, Indonesian nationalism should be put in the context of being a largest Muslim democracy as well. So religion cannot be separated from democracy. Religion cannot be separated from nationalism in Indonesia. And NU has been at the center of maintaining this balance and triangle between democracy, Islam, and nationalism in Indonesia. And from various speeches made by Gus Yahya before he became the chairman of NU, I think we would find this commitment, reiterated again and again. And also we've heard that in his speech earlier in this session. And thirdly, I think it is very interesting also that Gus Yahya made a reference to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the consequences of this collapse to the construct of leadership of the Muslim world, and probably in Indonesia, during the colonial period, in the 1920s. And then now, of course, we are facing a new setting of global environment. And then, but Indonesia as a project, as an unfinished project that has been held by Nahdlatul Ulama, we have to acknowledge that NU, since its foundation, and Indonesia, since its independence, operates within various contexts. Number one, the context is that Indonesia is a newcomer of industrialization. Industrialization requires cultural orientation. It requires political institutions. It requires some engineering of the societies, and so on and so forth. And then NU operates within that context as well in Indonesia. And also Indonesia is a newcomer of democracy. And then also NU helped Indonesia charting this new territory as a democracy in Indonesia. So both Indonesia and Nahdlatul Ulama grapple with the new identities, from time to time. And it is very interesting, I think, to see how the relationship between NU and the state, and the government evolve over time. But I've been spoken about this in various events, that regardless of the nature of the relationship between Nahdlatul Ulama and the government at the given period of time, Nahdlatul Ulama has never been really opposing the government. Nahdlatul Ulama always plays a very constructive role in finding and helping Indonesia forming what we are aspiring to be. Number four, Indonesia at the same time continuously doing effort in nation building. The question about the state and religion relationship, is a main question since day one of the republic, and it is I think still going on up until today. And we are lucky to have Nahdlatul Ulama that keep reminding us that we've agreed with the pluralistic idea of Indonesia, and Nahdlatul Ulama is the beacon of that kind of a protection of maintaining Indonesia as a plural society with the contribution from the Muslim majority. And I think this is where the balance that we need to put into perspective. Number five, I think when we look at Indonesia from various historical angles, I think many would agree that it should be Indonesia's destiny to be a plural society, given the geographical and political construct of Indonesia as a democracy. Now we have various identity at work, and then I think this might be also needs to be discussed within Nahdlatul Ulama and other Islamic-based organization. That is, we have identity as a Muslim democracy. We have an identity as a maritime democracy. This is, I think, very particular to Indonesia, because Indonesia's the way Islam brought to Indonesia through our sea lanes, by traders, I think helped to form the identity of some kind of an open-minded Islam, distinctive in Indonesia. That our country, Indonesia, has been the seafarer from long time ago, crisscrossing our sea lanes. And then they arrived in various parts of Indonesia and so on. And it contributed to the nature of the open-mindedness of Indonesian Muslim. And then I think this is something, the idea of Indonesia as a maritime democracy has been neglected. And the Indonesia, even as a maritime country, has been neglected. I think it started to come to the public discussion and public understanding since President Jokowi came to office in 2014, that the idea of Indonesia as a maritime democracy, it is true that Nahdlatul Ulama is largely, based in the agricultural society, but now I think, this Nahdlatul Ulama members living in the coastal areas of Indonesia also are very important. And they are the ones that now are affected by various new global challenges, the rise of sea levels and so on and so forth. affected Nahdlatul Ulama community in the coastal area, for example, in the southern part of northern part of Java Island. So these identities, multiple identities that Indonesia is having, I think also needs to be reflected by the Nahdlatul Ulama. And I believe under the leadership of Gus Yahya, this would come as naturally, because given his cosmopolitanism and internationalism and his leadership in Nahdlatul Ulama, I think would help Indonesia forming and maintaining these multiple identities. Number 6, I think, and this is very important, if I may, Nahdlatul Ulama has been breeding a new generation of scholars, young scholars, thinkers, technocrats, especially massively during Gus Dur, the late Gus Dur. Now, these, at the time, young, new thinkers, now holding various important positions in Indonesia. They become ambassador. We have Gus Mis in Tunisia. They become various leaders of ministers and so on and so forth. And I think this is something that Nahdlatul Ulama needs to continuously do, because I think Nahdlatul Ulama somehow needs to depart from the image as a traditional organization, because I think time has called. We are facing a global problem. We are facing pandemic. We are facing climate change. We are facing geopolitical change. We are facing technological race, and so on and so forth. It cannot be dealt with only with how we approach this problem culturally. It needs to be dealt with through technocratic ways. And then the Nahdlatul Ulama has a pool of a new generation that is very conversant with these new global issues and technology. I see, Ainun Najib, as a participant. He was put into spotlight a few days ago by President Jokowi, and I think during the ISEAS conference right after the 2019 election, I mentioned this, Dr. Norshahril, if you remember, in Singapore, that, for example, I think the first crowd-sourced election counting was initiated by Ainun Najib, because he's conversant with technology, right? And then the technology that he's knowledgeable of is used to solve, political problem that we could not agree on the day of the election who is winning, and technology is the solution. And I believe there are so many Nahdlatul Ulama, younger generation, who's expert on this climate change, scientists, and then the various areas of science, health, and so on, that needs to be brought together, and we are start to talk about global problem. And Pak Gus Yahya has been very eager to talk about humanism, globalism, and so on. And I think what he also means is that Nahdlatul Ulama should be able to contribute to find solution to the global problem that is now very technocratic, that needs to be dealt by science, by technocrats. And Nahdlatul Ulama has a pool of resources for that. Lastly, if I may, I think Gus Yahya earlier stated about the commitment of the recontextualization of Islamic teaching. And I think this is real. I happened to be in Lampung during the Muktamar, Gus Yahya, and then of course, what's missing from the discussion, public discussion, the election is important, but I think the discussion in the panel session is very important, the Basul Matsail and so on. And in the last Muktamar, the traditional kiais debating about climate change, about land issues, about marginalized people, and so on. And they are recontextualizing Islamic teaching, and they discuss about how NU should approach this issue of climate change. And I think this is the right way to go, because then, as I said, I think we need to look forward, because the global problem that we are facing, all this social capital that NU has as a beacon of Indonesian nationalism, as the beacon of the Indonesian democracy. But now I think the new challenge is that whether or not NU can contribute to find a solution to the global problem that is faced concretely by the region, Southeast Asia at the very least, and concretely by Indonesia, that we are facing especially, for example, in the past 2 years of the pandemic. And NU agenda is too big to be channeled only into one political party. And then and that is why NU, and I agree with Dr. Ibrahim that NU needs to collaborate, and that is why the election of Gus Yahya is very important, because Gus Yahya has been known for his wisdom and preference to stay above politics, and that probably what we need to have in Indonesia. I return the screen to Dr. Norshahril. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Phillips, Vermonte, Dr. Azhar, for those very insightful discussions. And I'm sure those are some points that you raised is mainly for good feedback also for NU's leadership to bring back home, and to, I think, for the betterment of not only NU but also for Indonesian society. Yeah, so we have about half an hour for a questions and answers session. But before that, I want to ask Gus Yahya whether, because I was told earlier that he may have to leave early. Are you okay to stay on, or?
Yeah, I think I can stay maybe until 11 Jakarta time.
Okay.
That means 12 your time maybe.
Okay, that's fine. That means you can stay until the end
of
our session.
Because
we have about
schedule for another activity.
Thank you.
On 11, okay.
Because if not, Pak Phillips and Dr. Azhar will have to answer your questions on your behalf. But so we have about half an hour for questions and answers, and I hope the responses can be short and concise.
Okay.
I'll try to take as many questions as possible and combine them. So I will take the first two, in fact, and combine them. It's by Alex Afrianto and Amy Chu, who's asking what's NU's position in tackling radicalism and also in promoting the message of moderation, humanitarian Islam. How do you want to tackle that? What are the strategies? And how do you want to take it to a more international level? Your response, Gus.
Yes, a very important way of thinking that we should have is that acknowledging the end game is not enough. Acknowledging the goal is not enough. We need to think about the strategy to reach that point of goal. So in everything that we do, we need first to understand, to acknowledge the actual reality of our that surrounding us, and then think about how to deal with that reality in order to bring about the transformation needed to move people toward the direction that we want. So in the past, I read the question from Pa Alexander Arafianto in the QA box, and he is asking about some entities that I established recently in the United States, like Bait Ar-Rahmah. This is an organization that I co-founded in North Carolina in 2014. We established this organization to facilitate the initial efforts to reach out to a broader international network for Nahdlatul Ulama to deliver its messages. And then that is a one channel. that we have been using to reach out to various international entities and network. And then domestically, what we did was raising self-confidence. It's like religious self-confidence of Indonesian Muslims. What happened around from around early 2000 to 2015 was that there are various different Islamic views propagated into Indonesia from various parts of Muslim world, like from the Saudi and the Egypt and so forth, and that then there were kind of tendencies to consolidate domestic support for each of those different theological strands, you see, or different madhab or a model of religious thinking. Now, again, what I believe is that Indonesia has its own claim of authenticity and authority in developing its own religious orientation. And actually, it is a proven practice by Indonesian Muslim leaders. See, the establishment, the birth of Nahdlatul Ulama is a proof of that. See, for ulama, for ulamas to organize themselves is an innovation, or in Islamic term would be called bid'ah, because there is no tradition whatsoever in the past for ulamas to organize themselves. The only organization, the only legitimate organization is the imamate or caliphate. But they initiate an organization of ulamas. There's something that shows us that even in the most so-called conservative community, there is a creative element that is aspired to change and transformation. And among the founding fathers of Nahdlatul Ulama, it was K. Abdul Wahab Hasbullah who played that role. Now, and we know Kustul, and now what we need is to continue this efforts. That's why, so again, we believe that we need to raise awareness about our own claim of religious authority, that we do not need to follow religious authorities elsewhere, coming from elsewhere. That's why we created this campaign of Islam Nusantara. The campaign of Islam Nusantara, the purpose of that campaign is to raise a sentiment about our right to have our own religious authority. And it is more a communication strategy than a conceptual, presentation. That's why we never have any official definition of Islam Nusantara. What is Islam Nusantara? We just leave it to the people's perception. And the way I see it, the purpose of that campaign has been achieved. Now we have, relatively sufficient awareness about our own right to have our own religious authority. Now, when we need to reach out to a more global endeavor, we need something else, because we're not supposed to try to call for people of other cultures or nations to follow, Islam Nusantara, which is Nusantara. So we need something conceptually more universal. That's why we created another brand, which is Humanitarian Islam. The original idea was from an Arabic, an Arabic term, Al-Islam lil Insaniyah, or in Indonesian, Islam untuk kemanusiaan, which means Islam that serves the entire humanity. But when I discussed this the term in English with some friends, and I came with Islam for humanity, then some friend thought that it may it may be misunderstood by some people. Some people may think that we want all humanity to convert to Islam. So that's why we twisted it. We made a little twist there and put Humanitarian Islam as a term, and that. And we started the campaign since 2017, and I would say now we are reaching an optimum, an optimal achievements, in our international endeavor. We are now engaging. We have substantial engagements with various international religious entities, such as the Vatican, and we also have a substantial engagement with an international evangelical entity, namely the World Evangelical Alliance, and we also have substantial contact with the Indian Hindus leadership and so forth. So I think in the future, Nahdlatul Ulama, after this, Nahdlatul Ulama is ready to operate the international, engagements by itself. Of course, we still need the entities that we created before this, like Bait al-Rahmah, and recently in 2020, we also created another entity, which we call the Center for Shared Civilizational Values. We still need these organizations to facilitate our international outreach, but now we are more prepared to come more directly as Nahdlatul Ulama. And also, since we have substantially close communication with the Indonesian governments, so we can expect that in the future there will be more cooperation with the government to represent ourselves in various international platforms, because actually what we believe is as the vision of Nahdlatul Ulama is in fact also the vision of the nation. What you think about Nahdlatul Ulama's international agenda, in fact, comes from the fundamental ideas in our, national foundational documents such as the Constitution and Pancasila and so forth. So Nahdlatul Ulama and the Indonesian government actually in the same interest on this matter. Now, in dealing with radicalism, radicalism and extremism, all this time we've been focusing on only theological debates about what is Islamic and what is not Islamic, what is legitimate in the eyes of Islam and what is not. And I would say this is no longer effective. We need something more, because exchanging quotes, from scriptural references will not bring us anywhere. There will be no conclusive result for this kind of debate. We need to bring the debate into another more realistic direction. And what we offer is to bring the issue of the choice between coming back to the old order or continue nurturing this new order. And we need to bring, we need to talk about the realistic consequences of the choice that we make. If we choose to go back to the old order before World War I, which was the jungle of competing identities, that means we will bring the world into, realistically, we will bring the world into chaotic destruction, because all this established structure of international order then have to be destroyed. The Republic of Indonesia, must be gone. The Singapore must be gone. Everything must be gone. To go back into one universal caliphate. You cannot imagine what's the realistic consequence of that choice. The choice to continue nurturing this new order is not easy also, but it is, I would say, more acceptable. By bringing this into discussion, then, I believe we will go into a more constructive, exchange of views, because basically what the world needs now is a way to peacefully coexist each other, among various different, groups and identities. We know that we have many kinds of differences about values that we believe, about the way of life that we want to hold on and so forth. So I think what the world needs now is first to identify first what actually the values that we do share each other, that the whole world share each other. We do share each other already. That's what we need to identify, whatever the values are, like humanity, justice, and so forth. And then what we need to discuss is what kind of values that we need to share in order to enable us to coexist peacefully with each other. And then after we have all that, then any differences between us, let's just tolerate each other. Now, all this, the endeavor toward this, this kind of settlement must be consensual, because we need the principle of equality, because without equality, then there will be no peace at all. It's just another, expression of the idea that, of Kustur, that is quoted by Dr. Azhar, that peace is impossible without justice. So peace can only possible in equality. So any settlement between, differences among us must be settled in a consensual way, without one side oppressing the other. Now, in addressing various controversial debates of values, not just among, because we have all kinds of differences here. Within Islam itself, we have various different theological views. Now, and between Islam and other religion, and between religion and secular ideas, such as the LGBTs and so forth, so really just we have to bring all the debate of differences, in a kind of democratic form where everybody has equal rights and dignity, and then let's just limit on the need for us to coexist peacefully. If some set of values is enough for us to coexist peacefully, then we don't need to talk about having consensus or of any other kind of differences that we have. So that's a fundamental thought that we are thinking. Now, I hope this addressed various questions from that I read from the Q&A boxes.
Thank you, Gus Yahya. I think you have played my part in reading the questions for me. I think you have addressed some of the questions that has been raised in the Q&A function by my colleagues Su Ann and Yu Fong about various issues, as well as the controversies, whether NU is thinking ahead, and also on issues of foreign policy. And I think you have addressed those queries. Maybe since we're really run out of time, maybe I just get two last responses from our discussants, Dr. Azhar and Dr. Phillips. Any last thoughts about today's talk on NU going forward? Maybe for Dr. Azhar, what do you think, since you have done a lot of work on the region, to what extent in Malaysia, in the whole Nusantara, are they familiar with this term Islam Nusantara, which NU is trying to promote? So what are your initial thoughts? And for Dr. Phillips, Vermonte, a lot of talk about the recent Muktamar is about the separation of politics and religion. Are you personally convinced going forward that this can be separated, especially in the context of the largest Islamic organization in Indonesia, NU? Dr. Azhar, maybe 3 minutes each to close this webinar today.
All right, thank you, Dr. Shahril. A good question. Through my journey in Indonesia, even when I've been invited to speak about Islam Nusantara, being invited by various groups, interestingly, I also hear many people support, and of course, some people, some quarters may not be fully understood what it meant, right? Because as what Gus Yahya mentioned, it was never being conceptualized officially. So, right? So it's up to you which group you want to define, blah, blah, blah. So in a way, it gives kind of a democratic space for some people to define what Islam Nusantara. Yeah, but we have good scholars writing from various groups, from various campuses that have defined it very well. Yeah. But some are confused with theological meaning of what Islam Nusantara about, right? I guess this is where more works needs to be done, to explain, right? In fact, even if it's not a conceptual work, but I think overall, if there is an action and an affirmative action, you do it, and then people will see it. Well, this is what you meant by Islam Nusantara, which is inclusive, which is cosmopolitan, which is tradition in orientation without becoming traditionalist, which is a plural. Many sorts of what we define Nusantara is also what constitute Islam Nusantara. But when it comes to the Malay-speaking world, right, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, people have heard more about Nusantara itself as a cultural entity, as a civilizational entity. But Islam Nusantara has not, really gelled quite well, right? So in that sense, I guess when the Indonesian counterpart was speaking about Islam Nusantara, sometimes that, the strong, national Indonesian flavor comes out very well, But as Gus Yahya mentioned, right, it's not meant to those outside, Indonesia to embrace this, right? And this is where I think the concept of humanitarian Islam kemanusiaan, I think it's more appropriate to be, shared, right? Even in the Malay-speaking world of Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei, So I guess this is a matter of communication strategy, And I think it can be solved, It can over time, and I think we have lots more from the NU, scholars and writers, who are able to do this very well, right? But one more plus, Dr. Shahril, the translation and cyber presence, digital presence is an important dimension that needs to be given attention. All right, thank you.
Dr. Phillips, to close the session.
Yeah, thank you. It's been enlightening to listen to the discussion and to listen to Gus Yahya's response to all the questions that I think convince us that will always be the protector of the Indonesian plural society. And but if I may, I would like to restate my my opinion. That is now NU is very important in maintaining Indonesia's identity as a plural society and a moderate Muslim society. But to add into the already full plate of Nahdlatul Ulama is that now we are dealing with new global issues that is requiring a technocratic solution as well. And then given the large membership of Nahdlatul Ulama, and then the new generation of thinkers, new PhDs, and then with the new middle class, with the NU background and so on, I think attention must also be given to for Nahdlatul Ulama to also pay attention to this new kind of problem that we are facing. I forgot to mention that in reference to the Ottoman Empire earlier, one of the reasons why the Ottoman Empire was slowly collapsing was that it was so late in acquiring new technology. Just to give one illustration, I believe Gus Yahya familiar with this example, that is, the print machine came to the Ottoman Empire, brought about by one official, Mutafariq, only in 1727, 300 years after it was invented by Gutenberg. So this 300 years of lagging behind in terms of acquiring technology, I think bring a devastating impact as well to the Ottoman Empire. That's why they are slowly collapsing. And I believe in the context of today's problem, same thing we need to take lessons from, that is embracing new challenges, and then the new problem, a global problem that not only Indonesia is facing, is very important for Nahdlatul Ulama. And Nahdlatul Ulama has a pool of resources that can be tapped, and it would help Indonesia and the region as well to complete the vision by Gus Yahya that Nahdlatul Ulama would be a Islam is a humanitarian force into the global challenges that we are facing together. Back to you, Dr. Saat.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. And in fact, it's an honor to be part of this panel, to moderate this session today. I really benefited a lot. Thank you so much, Gus Yahya, for the keynote address. Thank you so much, Dr. Azhar and Dr. Phillips. Well, in the past, I often hear the terms Islam Nusantara being spoken about. Today, I really hear the operationalization of it. I mean, we have to go deeper than rhetorics. You have to go to the ground. I hear that Gus Yahya talks about humanitarian Islam. I think this is a more scholarly body that has already existed. I think we have to go beyond rhetorics and go to the ground and talk about these issues. And I'm also delighted to hear that NU is moving ahead to forget about the old order and approaching the new order. And I think we cannot emphasize more the significance of acquiring technology and to go beyond theological issues of halal and haram, but to embrace new issues, global issues such as climate change and so on. So thank you so much, Gus Yahya, once again. Congratulations on your election, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
To Ulama going forward in providing leadership to Indonesian Muslim community. Thank you so much to all the panelists.
Thank you.
So for the audience out there, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again in the upcoming webinars. Take care and see you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.